Yo, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to this week's episode of Can I Kick It? We finished up our league previews. I know. It's not a league preview because we're technically, 4 games into the Premier League season, Kyle? But whatever. Doesn't matter. Time doesn't exist because we're still in the middle of a pandemic, even though people don't want to admit it or not. But with that being said, I brought on a resident Liverpool fan, Kyle, on so we can talk about the Premier League, give you all the ins and out of the league. And with that being said, guys, I want to say thank you for taking the time of your day for watching our show. If you're watching our show live on YouTube, thank you. Share it. Just take some time just to share the show so we can grow our base up. We're trying to get to 30 subscribers by the end of the year on YouTube. So make sure you share. But I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to introduce my co-host for today that's helping me talk about the Premier League. He's a Liverpool fan. He's probably one of the coolest guys out there. Is Mr. Kyle Ureta. How are you doing, man?
Stop it. Definitely can't be one of the coolest, but thank you. I'm doing great. Happy to be here, especially after Liverpool kind of, putting me at my wits' end the first 3 games. We finally put one on, and, now I'm convinced we're never going to lose again. So it's a better weekend now. It's a better weekend.
I mean, look, I seem like this is the way how it goes with Premier League fans. Is like, if our team doesn't win 2-3 games in a row, we're like, the team's crap. The owners are crap. They don't care. And then we win 2-3 games. We're like, this is awesome. We're winning the Premier League. I swear, to me personally, it feels like Premier League football is the closest thing we have to like NFL fandom.
Yeah.
Whereas like you have like a congregation of people that will like, their whole job is just to shit talk on the internet about their team.
Yeah, and it's so unique, and I think NFL obviously shares this because we have 1 game a week, right? So we have 1 week to sit with a loss or a win, and so the emotions ride and carry out for so long that we just have to, we have to take everything game by game because we don't have a choice. It's not like basketball. We might play the next night or 2 nights. It's, all right, no, we got to wait another week, and our sample size is small. Like, we have 38 chances to try and lift the trophy. And yeah, man, but it was getting testy. I mean, one of the monikers among the Liverpool fans is that it's always a hard way FC. So it was nice to actually pour one out, get a 9 spot. It made me feel good again.
Yeah, I mean, look, real quick, let's talk about that game, man. So I got up early to watch Man United. 9:30 rolls around. In my head, I was like, all right, I'm gonna try to watch another game. College football also on. I'm gonna try to watch College Game Day. None of that happened. 9:35, I'm like knocked out on the couch with like a coffee in my hand, like it's like slowly like pouring out. I wake up and my phone is like Liverpool wins 9-0, and I'm thinking, you sure it's not 6? Like, no, that's not right. And then I really looked like, oh no, it was really 9-0.
Yeah, and it's a 9-0 with Mo Salah not having a goal or assist. With Mo Salah like having, quite frankly, like a pretty poor game. Missed open net, like one that I couldn't believe he missed. He had a couple good shots, but he was terrible on the ball. But despite that, for us to actually put up 9, some of our young guys getting like Harvey Elliott and Fabio Carvalho scoring, and then Bobby Firmino, who's one of my all-time favorite Liverpool players, scoring 2 again, like OG Bobby goals. Like, it felt good. It felt good to see it again. And then Luis Diaz, earning his pay structure and what we paid for him and knocking in 2 also. It was great. It was a fun game. Those are always fun, man, but I know those are few and far between.
They are. Well, I mean, since we're there, man, let's go ahead. Let's talk about them. Let's talk about Liverpool, dude. Like, season expectation, of course, let go of Mane, let go of a couple other, I wouldn't say key pieces, but little cogs in the system. Little screws there that fit into the system. You guys got Luis Diaz last year. If you want to, you can count him as a summer transfer. Also got the very big, very good Darwin Núñez. Everyone was thinking like, all right, Man City's probably might have a drop off because we don't know how Haaland's going to fit. Liverpool seems to be raring to go, and it doesn't seem to happen like that out of the first 3 games. Do you think now with this 9-0 win, do you think Liverpool is going to start trending forward and upward and kind of get back on track? Or is it still the case of, nah, the ownership group need to get Klopp another midfielder?
So with Liverpool, we are who we are, right? Like Liverpool are never going to be the club to go and spend 100 million on a player. We're never going to be the one to have like a net spend of 200 million in the transfer window, like we just saw United now between Casemiro and now Antony. Where we spent, Darwin Nunez is one of the most expensive players we ever bought ever. And this is coming up months after we spent 65 million on Luis Diaz too. These are already this is already us spending a lot more than we usually do. But as far as the team goes, like obviously losing Sadio Mane it's going to be a hit because that's a world-class player, right? Is he the Sadio Mane from 3 or 4 years ago? Probably not, but I think you can't watch a Liverpool football game right now and not miss his presence on the field. Now we and this is all also part of our, I wouldn't say a scoring job because we just put up 9 goals, but Diogo Jota is hurt too. That doesn't help. So we're relying on a guy like Luis Diaz and Darwin Nunez who are newer into our system to operate with Firmino and Mo in a way that Sadio operated, and you can't expect that because of the chemistry they had together. But where Liverpool really have a glaring and gaping hole right now is in the midfield, especially with Thiago hurt. We saw we rolled out a midfield that was Jordan Henderson, James Milner, and Harvey Elliott against Manchester United. And you just can't do that because Jordan Henderson's our captain, and I love him to death. But he's not the player he was 3 or 4 years ago. James Milner is a great leader, and he's great coming off the bench, and especially when we have a lot of young guys on the field. But we can't expect him to play for 90 minutes. Will Liverpool go out and sign a big time midfielder and splash another 70, 80, 100 million? I don't think so. I know there was talk of Frankie de Jong and stuff like that. I don't think it happens. And I know Klopp, for better for worse, he loves his guys and he loves his squad, and he's not going to do a whole lot to shake the boat and to rock the boat in the locker room. But yeah, we lost Mane and we lost Origi, who's a Liverpool kind of cult legend in his own right. So there's a lot of changes. A lot of things have changed, but the standard and the expectation for Liverpool is to win the trophy. And the biggest obstacle that Liverpool had run into the last 4 or 5 years that we've been good is that we've been very good at the same time that Manchester City has been very good.
Yeah, I want to say, I feel like that's very crazy because if you go back and look at it, yeah, on one side, Man City has won the Premier League 4 out of 5 years. But then when you go back and look at it, I think, 2 out of those 4 or 5 years, Liverpool's been right behind them by a point or two. Literally, history changes if a goal goes fully across the line and Yotto dropped points last season to Watford.
Yeah. Or also you can look at last season, Manchester City not getting the handball called against Everton. That's the difference too. And there's always that one little thing that happens in the middle of the beginning of the year that you think, it's just a difference of a point or two. What's going to matter? But what we see Manchester City win the league with 100 points and Liverpool score 98 and not win the league, that's insane.
Yeah.
When you see any team at any level score 90 plus points in a season and not win the league, that's bonkers. We don't see that. We've never seen that in the history of the Prem. We even Arsenal's Invincibles, they won the league on 84 points or something like that. Let
me ask you this question before we go transition to the next topic. Klopp's legacy. I know he's loved by Liverpool fans, but overall, how do you think Klopp will end his legacy at Liverpool, given that he's coming to this juggernaut of Manchester City? Because we were saying, 4 out of 5 years, you've been the second best team probably in the world. You just had the best team in the world in your same league.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate. I mean, again, Liverpool's biggest problem has always been that Manchester City is better than us. That's it. Because you look at it in a world stage, we've won the Champions League, We won the league, yes, in a COVID year where there are no fans in the stands or anything like that. You know, we've won every trophy we've could have possibly won under Klopp, right? But again, it's all like, kind of to use a golf analogy, if people understand this, it's like Phil Mickelson being alive at the same time as Tiger Woods. You know, Phil Mickelson plays golf in any other era, he's the greatest of all time. Liverpool, if this Liverpool team exists 5 years ago, or maybe 5 years from now, it's the best team in the world. You know, it's just, you know, as far as Klopp's legacy, it's like there's not much you can. I think there's not much you can do about it, because Liverpool and FSG, the ownership group specifically, don't have the resources that Manchester City has. No one does. That doesn't exist. You know, we've seen, if we break down and look at how much Manchester City has spent on players in the last 4 or 5 years, just or even the last couple of years, they spent $100 million on Jack Grealish, who's not on the pitch all the time. You know, like, how do you compete with that? And the fact that we were always a point or two off, I think, says a lot about how good Jurgen Klopp is. And if you look at, like, last year, we beat Manchester City in the Community Shield Cup, which, whatever, like, preseason trophy, it is what it is. But Manchester City didn't beat us last year. You know, we ended up in a draw, and you know, what Jurgen Klopp has been able to do with Pep Guardiola and Manchester City haven't been able to do is win a Champions League.
Yeah.
You know,
I'm talking about Manchester City. Let's go ahead. Let's talk about them, man. Not only did this year did he add Erling Braut Haaland, but he also let go of Gabriel Jesus, let go of Raheem Sterling, which, me personally, I thought was going to hinder them a lot more attacking wise than what it has so far. So far, they've been Manchester City. When you look at Pep's career, I think the only thing left is to win that Champions League outside of Barcelona. Like, that's kind of like the golden goose that he cannot seem to catch. What is the hang-up when it comes to Pep and Man City when it comes to European competition? Because in England, they dominate. They can win it. You know, they won the FA Cup tenfold. They won the Community Shield. They won the Carabao Cup. They won the Premier League over and over again. They've shown it. But when it comes to Europe, it's almost like it reminds me of. Do you remember when John Calipari at Kentucky would have like these dominant teams? They can never get to like the Final Four.
Yeah, they lose in the first round. They'd be like that first round upset too.
Right. That's what this feels like with Man City. Like, it's like you're supposed to be there.
Yeah, I mean, Manchester City, like, with me, when people ask me, especially me being a Liverpool fan, like, oh, who wins Premier League? My answer is always, it's not a matter of if Manchester City win the Premier League. It's a matter of by how much.
Yeah.
You know, there's basically 19 other teams trying to play for the top 4, the top 6, and play in European competition. I mean, I've as far as like, and I can't explain why Manchester City just can't win a Champions League. I think what happened to them this last cycle is that they ran into the juggernaut that was Real Madrid. You know, Real Madrid were to me the best team in the world last year, and I'm not just saying that because they beat Liverpool in the Champions League. You know, Manchester. I can't explain it. I can't if I can tell you why Manchester City hasn't won a Champions League, I think they'd pay me a lot of money to tell them why and how to do it. But you know, I think that I don't know if it's coaching. It's not the players. You know, I know tactically Pep can kind of back himself into a bit of a corner with a tiki-taka type of stuff, and maybe having to play someone tougher than Bournemouth twice a year, and then running into like the Real Madrids and Bayern Munichs and stuff like that, causes a hang-up. I can't tell you. Do I think they have a great chance to win the Champions League this year? Yeah, I think they got significantly better. They have probably the best goal scorer in the world right now in Erling Haaland. They lost Raheem the Dream. They lost Gabriel Jesus, who was a bench option for them, quite frankly. But I mean, there are no holes in that team. There's not. You can't point at anything in that team and say that like, oh, this is what they need to get better, because whatever they need to get better, they just spend the money and get it.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you can say like if there's any weak spot in the Manchester City team, it might be the center back pairing. But most teams, maybe outside of 2 in the world, get a chance to really test that, because You're spending 80% of the time defending in your own box.
Yeah, the you and I can play center back for them, man. To be quite honest, like their possession rate is going to be so high. Their wingers are so fast. Holland's an absolute machine. Their midfield is so good, especially with KDB. It like they're not you know the they can afford to be a little more lax, especially in the mid defense.
I still stand on this theory that going back to I think it was the 2020 Champions League final with Man City and Chelsea. If Kevin De Bruyne doesn't get hurt, Man City wins that trophy, wins that Champions League, and there is a world where Kevin De Bruyne is the Ballon d'Or. Do you think is there an opportunity for him to win it this year, given the World Cup coming up and like we're saying, like there are probably the runners up, the favorites to win the Champions League.
I mean, with Manchester City, anytime Kevin De Bruyne is on the field, like, and they're a different team, he's, one. I mean, obviously, it's not like a hot take to say he's one of the best players in the world. He's far and away and it's hard for me to like find something positive to say about Manchester City just because I don't like the way they do business. But I mean, like KDB is just he's a magician. Like I love watching him more than almost anyone else in the world. The way he distributes,
so fun, but I hate the ownership structure so much.
Yes, exactly. I think with a full season under his belt, and now with the attacking options that Manchester City has, if they go on to win the Champions League, along with the winning the league and presumably every single game they play, yeah, he's definitely. I don't know how you keep him out of the conversation. Yeah. The issue he's run into injuries a bit, yeah, but on the field he's one of the best there is. There's a reason why he suits up for Manchester City, and that's why.
Well, another team that wish they could have their fortunes and that shares the same city with them is my own decrepit Manchester United. The team that seems to shoot themselves in the foot, but things seems to be brighter. I think the biggest talking point about Manchester City is one, how are they going to deal with the Cristiano Ronaldo? Is he going to stay? Is he going to leave? But then also is the whole restructuring and kind of quote unquote rebuild of the club. I know you're a Liverpool fan, but you also you cover the rest of the EPL. I want to ask you this: like, can the Glazers fix this, or is it too rotted to where it's better for them just to sell?
So, whenever I talk about Manchester United, I have to be careful to like take off my Liverpool fan hat because I can be super overly critical and like, as I'm a Liverpool fan before anything else, so it's hard for me to speak objectively about Manchester United. But that being said, I was honestly, and I'm not saying this as a Liverpool fan, I'm just saying as a football fan, I was genuinely shocked that they brought back Cristiano Ronaldo. Personally, I was absolutely shocked. I'm still convinced that the whole Manchester City interest was a smokescreen to get them to get United to sign him. I thought after Juventus, I thought he was going to go back to Sporting or something or Germany and just kind of play out the rest of his career. He's not the Ronaldo of old, obviously. That's not a shit. He's still very good. Still very, very good. But, clearly, and I think we're seeing it more so now, that he's just not, I guess Erik ten Hag is kind of starting to phase him out. I don't know what the plan is there. But to United's credit, they've phased out kind of some of the roster. I guess they're starting to trim the fat somewhat, getting rid of like Lingard and Pogba, and then letting Mata and Cavani walk away, and they signed what I think is a very good leader, and especially with everything that happened to him in Christian Eriksen. Lisandro Martinez, despite all the memes and all that stuff, he's a good, serviceable defender. What I think needs to happen to United, I think there needs to be a gross roster reform. Like when you're a notably better team when your captain is off the field, off the pitch, like that says something. when you're a noticeably better team when one of the greatest players of all time is off the pitch, that says something. I think they're headed in the right direction. I think I mean, Casemiro, I know he's older, but I think that's a solid signing with great experience. If the rumors and everything is true about signing Antony, he's an excellent winger who's already tearing in the short time that the Dutch league's been in play. He's been fantastic. He's scored, I think he's responsible for four goals in 2 games or something like that. 2 goals and 2 assists, if I read it correctly. But I don't know what the solution is, man. I mean, I think there needs to be new blood. I think the Glazers do need to sell, and I think unfortunately, as long as it's profitable for them, they're not going to. And United is a worldwide brand. Manchester United, to me, is up there with Real Madrid and Barcelona with like the most popular brand on earth. That you can go anywhere in the world and anyone's going to recognize the badge.
Yeah, that's very true.
Until the Glazers stop profiting off it, they're not going to sell. they're greedy billionaires. So why would they do that? But I think I'm hoping that the protests work, and I'm hoping that things change, because as much as I hate to admit it, the league and world football is better when Manchester United are good. Like, our rivalry between Liverpool and United is better when Manchester United are good. Like, yeah, we've won every game the last or United haven't beat us rather the last 4 years until 2 weeks ago. It's just better when it's fun. It's better when we're trading blows, and it's better when United are winning. I mean, I hate to admit it, but like that run in the 90s and 2000s with United was some of the best football on earth. Yeah. So I think the only way to get back to that is just to find someone who loves that United and not just the checks clearing.
Yeah, and I felt like we could do a whole show on the ownership of Manchester United, but we're not going to do that because that would be super depressing. I'll say let's focus more on Aaron Tech Hawk. Year 1 started under him. I want to ask you this: like, how long do you think it would take him to get United back to not I wouldn't say being a functional club, but to start challenging for the Premier League title? Because that's the ultimate trophy United wants to win. Yeah, winning the FA Cup is cool. Yeah, winning the Carabao Cup is cool. European competitions outside the Champions League are cool. But how long would it be before Aaron Tech Hawk starts challenging again for that Premier League trophy?
I think whenever anyone takes over a club that's taking over in a position in taking over a club that's in a state of dysfunction, I think year 1's always a waiver. It's not like, it's not like, Ollie took a Barcelona or Real Madrid or Bayern Munich job because he was doing so well, right? So he's not inheriting like a good United club. So I think year 1 has to be a waiver. He has to be able to play through it and see who fits the system, who does not. And unfortunately for soccer Twitter, this isn't FIFA. This isn't, Football Manager, where everyone's just a number or an algorithm and you can, click back and forth. Are you there? Did I lose you? Oh, sorry, I think I lost you for a sec.
Yeah, okay, we're cut out.
Okay, but yeah, I think year 1 has to be a waiver. You have to see who fits the system, who doesn't, who buys into the culture, who doesn't, and then what United doesn't lack is the money to spend, as we've just seen in the last 2 weeks, with them have a net spend of about 200 million between Antony and Casemiro, right? So the resources will be there. It's a matter of him being able to get the right guys. So that being said, I think you take a waiver this year. Do I think United can finish in the top 6 still? Yeah, absolutely. I think already from how the season looked when they started to even now, they're playing better. I mean, they played an incredible game against Liverpool. Even today, like, yeah, it was Southampton and it was a 1-0 game, but a win's a win. You got to beat those guys in order to get back. Can they still finish in the top 6? Maybe. I would say, like, I don't think they're cracking top 4. I don't think anyone is expecting them to or should expect them to. But, maybe they focus all their energy on the Europa, see how far they can go there. I mean, because I think just looking at that, like, it's them or Arsenal to win it all. But I think next year you can reasonably start asking for a top 6 finish, and then beyond that, like Manchester United, just for the sake of Manchester United, have to be a club fighting for the top 4 year in, year out.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope so. And I hope that United can get things settled. I hope the Glazers just understand like you're at a crucial spot. And if you play this wrong, it's not going to be good. It's not going to be good. But a team that happens to have everything playing with them well, undefeated so far, I think 100% record in the EPL
Yep.
is Arsenal. Dude, all of nothing made me love Mikel Arteta just a little bit more. And I got to say this, man. He is in this team. I know it's early, but there's something special about them, man, and it's scary good.
Yeah, I mean, firing on all cylinders, right? Gabriel Jesus, like signing of the year in the league without question so
Oh,
far.
100%.
Even them signing Zinchenko from Manchester City, could bring in both of those guys that know how to win. They know what it takes to win the league, to win trophies. I think that's huge for the culture of the club too, right? But that's a team firing on all cylinders right now. They're one of the youngest leagues in the club. Youngest clubs in the league also. You already pair those two guys with Odegaard, with Bukayo Saka, and even Chaka kind of showing shades of his own self, and then what I think is the best English keeper in the world right now, Aaron Ramsdale, with a very good tactical coach in Arteta. Like, yeah, the recipe is there for them to make a strong run this year. Do I think they win the league? No, I don't think they win the league. It's just not because of their starting 11, because their starting 11 is incredible, but we're 4 games in. Injuries are going to happen. We're going to go on international break. How do they come back from that? The World Cup is going to throw a monkey wrench at everyone this year, and I don't think they have the depth or the experience that the Liverpools, Manchester Cities, even the Chelseas have. So I think they're a top 4 club. I would argue that they might be 3 right now. I don't think they're there to compete for a title, but they're playing some fun, fast, exciting football right now. And it looks like the all or nothing curse hasn't gotten to them yet. So that's good too.
That is true. That is true. I mean, we're gonna talk about another number 10, Martin Odegaard, man. He's giving me very Dennis Bergkamp vibes, and it's like, dude, that's it. I still, me personally, I still think Arsenal needs like that destroyer midfielder. Like, I think that pushes them to the next level. But right now, man, like that team is scary good.
Yeah, and Odegaard is just a monster. I was really happy personally to see them make the loan from Real Madrid permanent. Because it's shocking to me that him and Holland play for Norway, and those that they can't qualify for World Cup. That's absolutely shocking to me.
Oh, that is wild. You sit there and think about it, you're like,
we really like that's not talked about enough that Odegaard and Holland are on the same team and can't qualify for World Cup. But as far as Arsenal goes, I mean, they're playing again. It's fun to watch them right now. It's the Arsenal of old, right? It's the TT Henry. Yeah, there's definitely shades of that. Is it sustainable for 34 more games? I don't know. I hope so, just because I have a soft spot in my heart for Arsenal because Thierry Henry is one of my favorite players ever. Bergkamp was so much fun to watch when he was there too. But man, I hope, just for the sake of like being a football fan, like this Arsenal team is so much fun to watch right now. And the hype surrounding it with the all or nothing is great, man. That's such a great fun team to watch.
It is. All or nothing was really, really good. Like, I think like I watched them when they came out every 2 episodes, and more I watched it, I was like, I could really see what I'm at. I could really see what he's building here, and it shows about what happens when you give a new manager, time.
Yep.
To not only get rid of the deadwood, but then to also allow him to build.
Yeah.
And you can tell this team is like functioning on a whole another level, and it's scary to see.
Yeah, it's just and you know how it goes. Arsenal are going to Arsenal at some point, you know.
Yeah.
So it's just unfortunately like a cursed club in that regard right now. Like we don't know what's going to go wrong, but you know something will. But I do think they've done a great job of cutting out the dead weight. I remember like the whole thing with Abba before they shipped him off to Barcelona. You know, like how do you get rid of a guy like that? But it's clearly been, you know, one of the best things for the club. You know, and I think you nailed it. They gave him time. They let him build his own roster, and he's done a fantastic job. So yeah, I think Arsenal's definitely one to watch. Maybe not this year, but coming up, especially, you know, Liverpool are kind of aging out. City, you're getting closer to kind of aging out also. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if Arsenal end up lifting the trophy in you know, a year or two.
Man, do you know how toxic our chat is going to be?
Oh, it's going to be the worst, but it's going to be the worst, but it is what it is.
Because Arsenal fans, like, they just don't talk trash. It's like, I don't know what it is. It's like an art form for them. Yeah. Like, they can be sucky. And then, like they just can't accept the fact that, like, oh, hey, we're doing bad. Like, let me chill out. No, they'll still talk trash.
Yeah. I think Arsenal, something about the London clubs. I think it's Arsenal and Spurs fans are very unique in that regard. Like, you haven't been good in a very long time, and you still talk a lot. Like, it's ridiculous. But I think now this is just adding kerosene to a wildfire right now. You know, yeah, if they're good, like, Arsenal fans are objectively some of the most obnoxious on the planet. But hey, man, if it's bringing me fun football and, you know, go for it. I hope they do well for 36 games out of the year, except for the two they play Liverpool, because I love watching Arsenal. Right. Love the club, love the brand. Fans are obnoxious, but hey.
It is what it is. But the other team that they happen to show North London with Tottenham Hotspur. Antonio Conte got this team playing on a whole different level. I unsmartly did not pick them to be in my top 4. I might have to revise that because I did not expect Spurs with Antonio Conte at this point to be where they are. I thought, like, all right, it's somewhere down the season, like, the wheels are going to fall off here. But it doesn't seem to be happening. Harry Kane is slowly climbing that high scoring ranking, man.
Yeah, I mean, Tottenham but I feel like this is the story every year for Tottenham. It's always a hot start. Is Harry Kane going to be healthy for an entire season? No, absolutely not. You know, I think I say this to my Tottenham friends, like, when Manchester City offered you $100 million for Harry Kane, you should have taken that. Like, you're never going to get that value again. Like, yeah, we'll get flashes of you know, the Harry Kane that we know, but I think that level of output we're just not going to see from him anymore. They're playing very good. You know, their goal differential is good. 4 games through, they're at a +6. You know, they're winning games. They signed, you know, one of my least favorite players of all time in Richarlison, but very, very, very good player. Son is amazing. You know, man, they're good. They're a good club. They're not super deep, but Conte's a great coach. We'll see. Like, Tottenham's a team I just don't trust. You know, I think they're probably the 3rd best London team right now, maybe. But they're, you know, they have this. It's kind of the same as Arsenal, that they have the starting 11. I don't know about their bench. And again, Tottenham are going to Tottenham. There's a reason why they haven't won a trophy since the Bush administration, you know.
Let me ask you this: when we talk about Tottenham, man, do you think Tottenham sold their soul? And when I say sold their soul, like, they're kind of neglecting the long-term effects of having Antonio Conte there to be, like, short-term, like, we want to win now, given that they have this new stadium, given that how things didn't kind of work out with Jose Mourinho, because it seems as if, like, they were going with that long-term growth under Mauricio Pochettino, and that didn't really pan out. Guaranteed you get to the Champions League final, but then next year we know how that kind of went. They bring in Jose Mourinho to kind of get there to win trophies. They get to a final, but Jose Mourinho's not there to coach it. And then it's kind of just like, all right, you kind of just crossroads, like, all right, well, let's go back to building. They bring in Nuno. Nuno gets fired, and then they're like, all right, well, let's bring in Conte. And Conte's been successful, but do you think at the end of Conte's run, because we all know Conte's not going to be there 5-10 years, do you think at the end of the run, Spurs are still in the conversation of a top 6 spot?
I in my preseason predictions, I put them at 4. I'll say that. I think that's their ceiling. Long-term wise, though, I think Spurs' biggest problem is that their owner, Levy, doesn't commit to a plan. Yeah. I think he's very impulsive, especially with kind of the carousel that's been manager hires lately. And I think I don't know, like you just see how they kind of operate, and you don't understand kind of what the identity of this club is. They've passed up on some really good deals. They made some really bad ones. I thought they did a great thing shipping off Dele Alli, and then they turn around and they don't sell Kane when they have a chance, and then they spend a ton of money on Richarlison, but it's there's no consistency in how they operate. I'm pulling up their list now just so I can, they managed to bring in Perisic on a free and stuff like that, but they're really kind of like they're I guess I'm losing words because there's no way to explain it, right? Like there's just no identity. There's no commitment to anything. Like, well, you're trying to win now. How are you trying to win now? Because you're not going to win now. Okay. So like, okay, do we start investing in young players? No, because we're going to sign Perisic and we're going to sign Richarlison. And we're going to keep around Kane and Son, who are older in their own right, So they're kind of like, and I say this as a Miami Dolphins fan, they're kind of like Miami Dolphins, like they're just living kind of like being incredibly average and not choosing to go up or down or commit to anything. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what their plan is. They need to figure it out. I think they have enough talent that they'll compete for a high position, but that's all they'll be.
Yeah, no, I mean that's a very good point you made, because I feel like a lot of the way how Spurs are operating and moving is because they're very afraid of going back to how they were in the 90s of like, we're barely staying to stay up in the Premier League. We're not, we can't get over Arsenal. If I remember correctly, I think they haven't lost to Arsenal. I think they finished above Arsenal in the last 3-4 years?
Yeah.
So it's like now they're like, oh, we're at the table. Like, we've got into the Champions League final. Like, we've got players that everybody wants. We're this lovely club. And I just would hate to see it fall apart. Because when Conte leaves by his own doing or, whatever, I just have this weird feeling that they're going to fall apart and it's going to be bad.
Yeah. And Conte's always been a stopgap, right? That's not a guy you're expecting to stick around for a long time. So the most important thing they have to do is set it up for whoever's next. And I think Conte was always kind of a stop end before the next guy to walk through the door. So we'll see what they do. I think they grossly need to invest in their youth and start giving some of those guys minutes, because you have a bunch of 30-year-olds running around the pitch right now, and that's going to be good enough to get you a top 4 or top 6 spot. But beyond that, it's you're going to set yourself up for becoming mediocre again.
Right. It's funny that you mentioned that, because right now, at the top of my head, I could probably name a youth player for all the other top 6 teams outside of Spurs.
Exactly.
Like every team, Chelsea, you have Conor Gallagher. Man United, you have Scott McTominay. Man City, Phil Foden. Liverpool, Harvey Elliott. And who else will we get in the top 6?
I mean, I get it's
Arsenal, it's Saka. But
yeah.
Spurs, I look at that team. I mean, Eric Dyer, possibly, but like Eric Dyer is what, 27-year-olds? 27
yeah. That's if he's youth, so am I.
Right. And I just look at him, and you make a good point. Like I can't name a young player that's in that Tottenham team that's contributing game in, game out, like those other players are.
Yeah.
Whether good or bad.
Yeah. So I think that's what Tottenham needs to do. I think they just need, or at least figure out what they want to do and just execute it and not get frustrated and then change course halfway through the plan. You know, like if you want to really grow and be in the competition and like compete for a title, yeah, you might have to like take a step back and finish in the middle of the table for a couple years, but you have all the money on the planet to spend as much as you want. They have just as much money as anyone. They just spend it incredibly poorly. And like, is Richarlison a good player? Absolutely. Is Perisic a good player? Absolutely. Kane was a world-class scorer for a long time. Son is amazing, probably my favorite player on that team. But what's next?
Yeah,
that's the issue. Like, what happens 2 or 3 years from now when these guys are, showing up to Denny's for the early bird special? Like,
that's very much true. That's very much true. So we move on to another part of London. We talk about Chelsea, man. And I ain't gonna lie. At the beginning of the year, Chelsea seemed very shaky. They still seem very shaky.
yeah.
But with Roman Abramovich selling Chelsea last year, a lot of stuff seemed in the air. Like, is it going to be a massive overhaul for Chelsea? Granted, you just won the Champions League. They seem to not even care about that because Todd Bowlen is buying any and everyone that seems to be available. Raheem Sterling, Koulibaly, seem to be buying all kinds of center backs. Also seem to be coming in America, buying players. Christian Pulisic can't seem to sniff the field. For Chelsea this year, man, is it a year in which you can get away of kind of using this as a rebuild year? Or is this a year where you're going to have to get over these challenges soon?
Yeah, I think they're very much in a rebuild. And it's not that Chelsea aren't good, because they're good. But, they don't have a striker. They don't have a number 9 right now. Who's that going to be? Do they make a move before Tuesday or Wednesday or whatever the deadline is? I don't know. They seem to be just signing center backs and wingers. Now, I think they're also in the I do think they've committed to the, to kind of a rebuild. You see it like, obviously letting Lukaku go on loan. That's eventually going to become permanent. Rudiger moving to Real Madrid, Christensen, letting him walk and stuff like that. But they brought in Raheem, who's a stud. Koulibaly's a stud. And then they Cucurella, who's despite his personal deficiencies, is a good player. But the issue is they're not bringing in anyone who's just gonna get in front of goal and put in the net, right?
Yeah.
And then Pulisic is presumably on his way out. My hot take is that he ends up at Leeds United with the rest of the United States men's national team. Okay. I don't know if that happens this window, but I think he's going to get frustrated by January, because you're right, he's absolutely not touching the field. And not that it's ever going to affect his World Cup status with the U.S. national team, so I think that's fine. But I think at Chelsea he was a little too big for his britches anyway. I think and people who know me know I kind of have this vendetta against Pulisic, because I think he's incredibly overrated. But I think he can go to Leeds and perform well. I think he can, even like the links between him and Newcastle have been pretty strong, especially recently. I think he can do well and he can go there and perform. But I think they're continuing to kind of trim some of the fat that they have, especially within the ownership. I think they're taking a good approach. But they do need to find a number 9. And I know that's a cursed number for them. But they need someone who can stand in front of goal and put some in the net. That's what they're lacking right now. Do they address that? I don't know. But I think we can all consider Chelsea to be in a rebuild. I think they're number 6 right now, but they have a goal differential of -1. So I don't know what they're going to do. Do they crack? I don't think they cracked the top 6. They might be the odd man out there. And my other hot take with Chelsea is that I think Tuchel's gone by January, because I think he's a bit of a mess right now. But we'll see.
Honestly, man, I don't begrudge you on that, Like, it just feels like very much with Chelsea. Ever since they won their Champions League, it was very much like, all right, let's not have a real strategy. Who can we just buy to fill in the hole? We don't have a recognized striker. Let's go get Lukaku. Okay, we bring in Lukaku. And it just, I don't know, it just feels like the vibe of the team is very much up and down, very critical, very different from the women's team, mind you. But it just feels as if with Chelsea, I don't have a good vibe. I don't have a good vibe of what they're doing week in and week out because you look at them against Leeds and you're like, yeah, this ain't good. And then you look at them versus Leicester, you're like, okay, this is the Chelsea I'm kind of used to recognizing. So it's kind of like they're very much Jekyll and Hyde. You know?
Yeah, and I think this Chelsea team is the one that we're just going to see that they're going to beat the teams they're supposed to. They're going to lose to the good teams, and that's going to be it. That's why I think they're probably there. That's why I think they're outside of the top 6 right now. At least that's how they'll end up, barring any changes they make before Tuesday or Wednesday and January. If this is the roster that they're going to stick with and they're going to roll out with, then I don't think we'll see them. I don't think they'll fall like below like 9 or 10, but I don't think they make the top 6. And I think that might be okay, right? Like if you're looking to invest in the club long term and the roster long term, like yeah, some things need to be made. You have some very good players. You have some very good players that may not want to be patient, but they we'll see.
Real quick, you brought up the questions. I'm gonna ask you about it. If Tuchel does leave, who replaces him?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna. That's why I'm always hesitant to say that. Like, oh, who do you get rid of? Like, because soccer's so weird, especially world soccer is so weird with coaching hires, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what are they like? Jose's got Roma rolling. Do they bring back Jose? What do they do? Like, where do they go to find another coach? Do they go and poach someone at Germany again? Do they, pull? Like, I don't know. Like, I'm not gonna. The one thing I've learned with the EPL is that when it comes to coaching searches, like I'm done speculating because if you would have told me, like for example, Spurs was gonna hire a Nuno, I would have laughed at you. And then they go ahead and hire Nuno.
Yeah.
It's just world football is so strange from a coaching perspective. I say that as someone with limited knowledge, and like I just think like I mean Chelsea aren't going to be great if they're committed to rebuild. Maybe Tuchel sticks around and be like, okay, you're the guy, but you're going to have to kind of eat it this year, or if like, hey, we're going to rebuild and we want to move on in a different direction. I don't know which way they go, but
yeah, it's gonna be interesting. Well, that's the top 6. I say let's talk about some teams that are kind of interesting, teams that are really catching attention, and it can probably push for a European spot. I think the most likely are Brighton, Leeds, Newcastle.
Yeah, I think that's a safe. I think that's safe. I'm a little less convinced, and this is going to sound strange, but I'm a little less convinced about Leeds, just because their possession numbers are actually kind of terrible. I think they're at like 45, 46% right now. Now they have guys that can put the ball in the net. They have good, young, fast players. Their possession numbers are kind of bad. Their passing numbers are kind of bad. But they have guys who have been able to perform in big situations. I love Leeds. I love watching them. Is what the Leeds we're seeing right now, 4 games into the season, going to be the same team in January? I don't know. But they're a lot of fun to watch right now. They're a lot of fun to talk about. I want them to do well.
It's hard.
I want them to do well so bad.
I do too. I feel you. I do too. And I think, me personally, I think out of those 3, I think Brighton gets in to a European spot this year. I'm convinced on it. I think Graham Potter is a great coach, and there's anyone that can take that Chelsea spot, it's probably Graham Potter.
That's a great point. And with Graham Potter, no one does more with less than he does, I think, in the entire league.
Yeah.
Because Brighton's they're not splashing the cash for a big name. They're not, even if they have the cash, it's not exactly a desirable place, right? Like if someone's going to come into England to play big time football, Like they're not going to Brighton, right? They're going to one of the big six clubs, one of the London clubs probably, and you know, so no, I mean, but he has. I think they trimmed some dead weight with them shipping off Maupay to Everton.
Yeah.
You have some of their older guys playing well. Former Red Adam Lallana, he's even said that he thinks he's playing the best football of his life right now. You know, I think Brighton can definitely be in the conversation, especially since what they have that I think a lot of teams lack is an identity. They know who they are and they know how they operate. And I think that speaks volumes about their coach. The only reason why I think Newcastle might get into the top six is just because they have this large influx of cash now. We already saw them sign Alexander Isak, who I think is going to do wonderful for them. He's a guy coming off of 17 goal season 2 years ago. He didn't have a great year last year, but he was very, very good 2 years ago. And Newcastle has the money, which unfortunately is the driving force behind success in the league, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if they get impatient now in the next couple of days or in January, they can just, pull out the checkbook and things can change very quickly. But I love watching Leeds and Brighton. Those are teams that I always find myself kind of rooting for. And I'm a big Graham Potter guy. Like I think if Chelsea were to move on to Tuchel, I think that would be a great candidate.
I think so as well. So, I mean, I think those three teams are going to be interested in watching. Another three teams that's going to be interested in watching are Everton, Wolves, Leicester, man. And they right now are holding up the Premier League. And it's kind of like, I'm not granted, Everton, I had them down there. I think Everton's getting relegated. I think they got saved by the grace of God last year. I think Frank Lampard called in a deal with the EPL. He was like, hey, look, just let me stay up 1 year. You're not doing this. I can see them going down. But having Wolves and Leicester, more or less, who still has not bought in anybody but has let players leave, what's going on there, man? Because it's not looking good. It's not looking good.
I am personally shocked that Brendan Rodgers still has a job at Leicester.
Thank you.
I am personally shocked.
I think the only reason why he's still holding on that job is because of the FA Cup trophy.
Yeah, I don't know what the plan is there. Leicester is in, they've let a lot of guys walk. And I'm looking at the list now. They've let a lot of people walk. And then since the summer, they've brought in Alex Smithies, who I'm going to be honest, he's a goalkeeper that they got from Cardiff
to be a backup.
That's a team that's struggling to score despite having Vardy, who's one of the best scorers in league history, I'd say. There's not much there, and then now even with the rumors that they're shopping Tielemans, I don't know what the plan is. I think are they going to end up getting relegated? No, I don't think. I even if they bring in nobody else, I don't think Leicester end up getting relegated. I think if you look at the numbers, Bournemouth are like demonstrably bad, and I think they're the first team out. Wolves and Everton, I think they have a lot of work to do, and I'm a Liverpool fan, so I'm obviously going to be a little more critical of Everton, but that roster's terrible. That roster is absolutely terrible.
Me personally, and I don't think I'm saying anything different than anyone might believe. I don't think Frank Lampard's a good coach. I think Frank Lampard had his best success when he's had very good teams like Derby County. They were a good team. Chelsea his first year, very good team. But when expectations are put on, or when he has to build it, Chelsea his second year, Everton last year, it hasn't looked good.
Yeah, and tactically Lampard is a mess, right? Everything's just chaos. It's like I'm gonna hope to God that like my players can pull me out of this. That's kind of what it feels like watching his teams play. Everton are bad. And then they just signed Neil Maupay, who's not good. There's a reason why Brighton just let him go for a reasonable fee, right? They took a waiver on Dele Alli and now he's playing Turkey. It looks like they're going to ship off Anthony Gordon, who's their best player right now, I'd say, who's, one, can't stay healthy, and two, still very young and has a lot to develop, but probably the most promising player in your system right now. And then DCL is just going to get Dominic Calvert-Lewin is just going to get fed up and he's going to want to leave. Like that's a guy that he's hurt now, whatever. But I think come January we see him move, especially if it's looking like Everton are like inching closer to relegation. I don't think Frank makes it to January, to be quite honest. Because Everton, as bad as they are, they're a very proud club and they won't put up with it. So I mean, and the one that's in the same boat too is Wolves. Wolves are another one. They're letting a lot of good players go, and they are getting nothing for it. They just let Connor Cody go to Everton. Who poor guy. A bunch of us are calling him a double agent because he grew up a Liverpool fan. So kind of maybe a Rafa Benitez 2.0 there, but they've let a lot of good players go, and I think Wolves. I say Everton because it's funny for me to say Everton, but I genuinely think Wolves are a strong relegation candidate this year.
Man, to have Wolves down there, man, it just, I don't know. I feel like Wolves really peaked that year. They got the year with Nuno. And then after that, they just steadily started to digress. Like, they've never been able to evolve to that next level. You feel me?
Well, they had like an influx of very good young players, right? They had Diogo Jota. They had Connor Cody. They had Jimenez and Nito and stuff like that. And they're all gone now.
Mm-hmm.
They're kind of they've been able to bring in a bunch of funds, but they haven't done anything with it.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're absolutely right. They haven't been able to do anything to make you like, okay, I see the direction of where they're going. Because if Jimenez go gets hurt, who's the backup?
Yeah.
If Nunes gets hurt, who's the backup? It just feels as if like, I understand they have this Portuguese connection and bringing in Portuguese, which is fine. It's Danny. But when I look at this team, I'm just like, you guys haven't taken that next step, because all the conversation around Wolves were, all right, Wolves is going to be the team to start knocking on the door in that top six. They did that when they qualified for Europe. But then after that, it's just kind of just like, well, we're cool being a Premier League side,
Yeah.
Right. I'm not saying these situations are the same, but it very much reminds me of Sunderland. Like, Sunderland was cool just being a Premier League side.
And I think Sunderland's actually an excellent example of like because they're another club that back in that time they started selling off good players, right? They sold off Jordan Henderson to Liverpool, and they sold off some Pickford to Everton, and they got a nice influx of cash, and they managed it incredibly poorly.
Yeah.
And now Sunderland have bitten and clawed their way back into the Championship, but they got set back a long time. I'm not saying that Wolves are going to get relegated 3 years in a row like Sunderland did, but they, if they can I think if they don't do anything, they're going to find themselves in the Championship next year, which, is what it is. Everton, I think they're really bad. I do think Everton eventually figure it out, just because if there's one thing we've learned about Everton ownership, they want to be just good enough to not get relegated, especially lately, right? Because they were in the relegation zone for a while last year. They kind of had to pull it out the last 3 or 4 games. I think we may see something similar. I think they'll turn it around a little quicker when they get rid of Frank before January, presumably. And again, got World Cup year. Weird things are going to happen. We're going to see decent teams drop. We're going to see bad teams rise with injuries and stuff like that. So we'll see.
We definitely will see. So real quick, so we can kind of get to the point. We got Brentford, we got West Ham, we got Crystal Palace, and who else am I forgetting? Yeah. Oh, Southampton. I always forget about Southampton. Those 4 teams. When you look at them, you don't think like, all right, they're challenging for Europe, but they're not going to get relegated. What do you think is the best? Like, what is the best case scenario for those teams?
I mean, those teams. I mean, play fun football, man. Like I think that's has to be it because those teams can't objectively look in the mirror and say like, yeah, we're to compete for top 6 this year, we're to compete for top 4 this year. They can't. They don't have the funds, they don't have the resources, they don't have any of that. Yeah. Crystal Palace is playing very fun football. They're a really cool team to watch. I'll say Crystal Palace, right? Like if Liverpool didn't exist and I never learned about Liverpool, I'd probably be a Crystal Palace fan right now. That's just the kind of history they have, the kind of club they are. I think Vieira is doing an awesome job there. I think they have a good, fun team to watch. Just brought in Chris Richards, who's been playing pretty well for them. But that's all you can hope to be. You will always have those strange years, right, where we see like a West Ham in the battle for the top 4 or the top 6, or even a Crystal Palace in the conversation. And you know what? Some of them may be in that conversation this year. I think Villa, like, they're going through it right now. They've had a rough start, but they've played. They lost to Bournemouth. They're about to play Arsenal. And maybe I'm saying it because I'm a big Steven Gerrard guy, obviously my favorite player of all time. But I think that we can see like an Aston Villa or like a West Ham or a Crystal Palace, not a win, not get into European competition, but we can see them, ruin someone's season or like take points. Those are teams that can all objectively take points away from big clubs. Like we already saw Crystal Palace take points away from Liverpool.
Right.
These are clubs that can catch City or Arsenal on a down day and take advantage and play good enough football to win. I think
next week lose to Everton.
Yeah, exactly. You'll see them lose to an Everton or a Bournemouth or something like that, but they'll turn around and they'll beat or draw one of the top 6 clubs, and then they'll draw against like Nottingham Forest or something like that.
I got to say, out of that 4 that we talked about, it seems like a very exciting coaching group. You got Ralph Hasenhüttl at Southampton. You got Patrick Vieira at Crystal Palace, Steven Gerrard at Aston Villa, and David Moyes at West Ham. Out of those 4 managers, who do you think takes that next step to become, get another job? My bet is on Patrick Vieira. I think Patrick Vieira is the next coach in line to make that next step.
Yeah, I think Vieira would definitely be the one of those. I think Gerrard can get there. He just needs a little more experience. We already saw what he can do with what he did with Rangers in Scotland. He went into a league where Celtic had won like 12 years in a row or something like that and won the league, and then he got the Aston Villa job. Patrick Vieira has Crystal Palace playing good. Like I know the results don't kind of show it as well, but they've been competitive for 4 games. They played very well. They've played very well against Liverpool. Zaha to me is one of the funnest guys to watch in the league. Although no one gets in Zaha's way like Zaha, it seems. But I think Vieira would be the guy. I think if we see anything shaken up at the top 6, I think that's a name that we might hear called. And even internationally, like a big job opens up in Spain or Germany. Like these are guys. I think all 4 of those guys conceivably would. Except Moyes because I think he's an England lifer, but I think the rest of those guys, they can conceivably get jobs in other countries or something like that. But I think they're all. I think those are a very good group of 4 managers right there.
Yeah, very, very, very good group. Real quick, let's talk about the promotion team. The team that got promoted last year from Championship. You get Fulham, Bournemouth, Nottingham Forest. And every year, when the promoted teams come up, everyone thinks they're going straight back down. But some weird way, 1 or 2 find their ways to stick around and they start, developing and getting crazy. I think the most unique thing about this group of 3 is they're all going about trying to stay in the Premier League in very different ways. You got Fulham, who's like, all right, we'll make little tweaks and changes here and there. They seem like a club built on journeymen because Mitrovic is in former Newcastle, Marcelo Silva was at Everton and Hull City. Other players in there kind of seem very journeyman-like, but they're kind of like, all right, we'll add a player here, tweak things there. You got Bournemouth that is like, nope, we're not tweaking. We're staying with what we got. We're just going to, go with what we got. And then you got Nottingham Forest, who hasn't been in the Premier League, I think in 22, 23 years.
Yep.
and is playing FIFA career mode where you get the $100 million
Yeah.
extra money and just do everything you want with it. I know it's hard to tell which way is going to work best, but which team do you have the most faith in staying up?
So it's not Bournemouth because again, the stats read that Bournemouth has been demonstrably terrible. They're averaging like just over 5 shots a game on target.
Yeah.
Their possession is 35% for the year. Their passing percentage is something like 75%. You know, it's Bournemouth are just not. I think they're going to easily be the first team out. That being said, I think Fulham can make a splash, and I think maybe not sustainably, but I think they can buy themselves another year or two in the Premier League, just because, like you said, they've went out and they've just bought they've just gotten a bunch of journeymen. You see a bunch of guys with Premier League experience that they've brought in. You got Issa Diop from West Ham, you got Duffy from Brighton, Leno from Arsenal. Even Mbabu from Wolfsburg, who I think is a really fun player to watch. Pereira from United. They're investing, I think, reasonably for what they can expect a newly promoted team from the Championship to do. But man, Nottingham, I think they've like you said, man, they turned off the strict negotiations on FIFA and they've just signed everybody.
Right.
And a lot of guys with good experience. We see it where like Lewis O'Brien from Huddersfield, like he's a good young player that I think they brought up. Jesse Lingard that they brought in from United. Morgan Gibbs White, another guy that Wolves let walk. Omar Richards from Bayern. They've brought in good players. Even Awani from Union Berlin. I think Nottingham. I think they can be probably the best of those three long term. I think Fulham may be the better team of the three right now. But I think the ones who are really setting themselves up to maybe stay in the Premier League and ride it out here for a while are Nottingham Forest.
I think I even saw something today where Nottingham were close to sign Lodi from Atletico Madrid.
Yeah.
And it's like, where are y'all getting this money from? Yeah, I feel like they've just been saving it like year after year. They got relegated. It was like, all right, look, we're going to put another $1 million in here. This is the Premier League penny bank. And when we get there, we're just going to act stupid crazy and just spend a stupid amount of money.
Yeah, they're like a teenager that got hit by a car and came into some money for the first time in their lives, right? Like, oh, fuck it, I'm just gonna buy everybody, Right. And but I think they've managed the money well. Whatever influx of cash that came in, they've managed it well, and I think they're doing a good job of investing in players that can contribute now while can still develop into good players down the road. Mm-hmm. So we'll see. I think Nottingham's probably best set up to stay up long term, while Fulham has a bunch of band-aids on and they may be able to fight through it, and I think they can. Excuse me. But we'll see. And me personally, I want to see Nottingham stay up just because of the history that they have in the Premier League and the club that they are. Such an, and you can say that about just about a lot of English clubs, but what an awesome fan base they have too. So.
Yeah, very much so. Well, real quick before we hop into the fun part of the show, we talk about promotion relegation. We talk about who we think are going to win the league, who's going down, who's getting up, what trophy might be the easiest one for the English team to win. I just want to remind listeners, subscribe. Take a moment, subscribe to the podcast. If you're listening, go to YouTube right now. Type in Can I Kick It FC. Subscribe. Help us get to 30 by the end of the year. But with that being said, man, let's go ahead. Let's move on to promotion. Who do we think is going to be promoted at the end of this year into the league? Or who do we think is going to get relegated out of the league?
All right. So the championship to me is the craziest league in world football. Just because it's such a brutal schedule. And you really never know, right? I mean, there's a lot of good teams in the championship right now. I think Sheffield might be able to find a way back in. Hull City is playing very good right now. Although defensively they do have some things to figure out. Bristol City leading the league in scoring right now are fun to watch. Personally, I want to see Sunderland make their way back up. I would love to see QPR make their way back up. But man, it's so early, and man, the championship changes so quickly.
It does.
I mean, we'll see. I think Middlesbrough, like they're not off to the best start they've had, but I think that's a team that's good enough to claw and fight their way back up. So Norwich, and then obviously Norwich and Watford, like they just have like semi-annual passes to back into the Premier League for some reason. So
right, it seems for some reason like we're like, all right, who's gonna come up? And like you're right, the championship changes month after month.
Yeah,
because I think at one point last year I was looking at it and I think was it? I don't know if it was Reading. I think Fulham was running away. I think like Reading was in the running for it, QPR, and then you look and you're like, oh, yeah, all of it out of it by May. So you're right, it changes month to month, but I think we kind of agree semi-quasi on who's going to relegate. I think Everton's one of those teams that's in that realm. Wolves are definitely in that realm. I got Leicester kind of right there, Bournemouth, and a surprise one I'm going to throw out there, Southampton.
Yeah, I think Southampton have gotten lucky, that just other teams have been demonstrably worse than they have, but they're a team that like you can't even call them a mid-table team anymore. I think they're definitely a bottom half team the last couple of years. Southampton are definitely, they're definitely contenders. Gun to my head, I'm gonna say Bournemouth first one out, Wolves second one out, and it's going to be whoever survives between Everton and Southampton, probably.
Yeah,
I think Leicester figured it out. I think I think they have enough talent on the roster right now, as it stands. If they sell Tielemans before the deadline, then I'd throw Leicester City into that mix because he's kind of keeping them afloat right now, and Vardy can't score if there's no one to give him the ball. So
I don't know, man. I feel so weird when it comes to Leicester just because of the fact of, one, they haven't added anyone, but then I also look at this team and I'm like, you guys are supposed to be so much better than what you are right now. And it just feels like
they sold their soul for the title in 2016, man.
Right. It just feels like a team whose eyes are just glazed over. You can tell whatever Brendan Rodgers is telling them, they're not listening to it. It kind of gives you the feel of where Liverpool was before Klopp got there.
Yeah, and yeah, that was a big. We kind of saw that with Liverpool too. Like Liverpool were never in any fear of relegation, but Liverpool weren't Liverpool. By the time it was all said with Brendan Rodgers, I still believe Steven Gerrard left to LA Galaxy because of Brendan Rodgers. To be honest with you, I think he became so disenfranchised with him that those two things kind of happened hand in hand. But yeah, I think Brendan Rodgers has long overstayed his welcome at Leicester City. I don't think he's a good coach. I didn't think he was a good coach when he was here with Liverpool. And again, if Vardy's going to get hurt, that the guy's 35, 36 years old. He's going to get hurt. Yeah. Tielemans is far and away your best player, and they're talking about sending him off. So if the wrong injuries or the wrong moves happen at the wrong time, it's over for them. You're right. They might be in the conversation now that I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, I mean, really, if you really look at this Leicester roster, like you said, Tielemans is about to leave. Maddison's on the verge of going to Newcastle.
Yep.
Fofana's about to go to Chelsea. Vardy's on his legs. Kasper Schmeichel's gone. You kind of look at that team and you're like,
yeah. Yep. I completely forgot about Fofana going to Chelsea too. That's another one that,
right.
Yeah, that's going to be a huge loss for them if that eventually goes through.
I think and this is crazy saying this, if they look bad against United when they play, I think Brendan Rodgers might be the first coach gone.
He might, if it continues. They won't have a choice, right? I mean, Leicester. Talk about a club that came from nothing to something. I saw something that like the year that they won the league, like they had worse odds to win the league than like the Cleveland Browns did at the time, and the Cleveland Browns like won like 0-16 the year before, something like that. It was some wild stat like that, you know. So a club that saw that kind of growth and success happen to turn around and see this, like I can imagine there's going to be some sort of impatience, and they're not signing anybody. They're not, they just seem to keep shipping guys off. I don't know what the plan is. Again, if the roster stays as it is right now, I think they find a way to get, finish probably bottom half of the table or mid table. But yeah, if the wrong the wrong combination of transfers and injuries happen, they're very much in the relegation zone.
Right. Well, let's go ahead. Let's start wrapping things up, man. Which trophy is going to be the easiest? Well, let me back this up. We got our Champions League teams that qualify: Man City, Liverpool, Chelsea, Tottenham. We got our Europa League teams in Arsenal, Man United, and then we got our Europa Conference team in West Ham. Out of those 7 teams, who do you believe will go the farthest, and what will be the easiest competition for England to win this year?
Arsenal win the Europa.
Ooh, okay.
I think I saw their draw and I kind of looked at it and again, this is all the operation that Arsenal keep playing the way they're playing and operating at this new standard that they are. I think Arsenal win the Europa pretty convincingly. Yeah, that would be my bet. I wanted to say City in the Champions League, but that's obviously a different monster. You're playing against the best teams in the world, and City seem to be cursed in that regard. So those are that's mine. Oh, West Ham could win the Europe Conference.
I don't think they win it, but I think what's going to happen is I think David Moyes is going to be like, all right, we're not doing so hot in the league. We're going to forget the cup competitions. We're going to forget the League Cup. We're going to forget that.
Let's grab a trophy.
Let's go for the Europa Conference League, and let's focus on staying up in the Prem, and that'll be it. I think that might will happen. And you know how I said Patrick Vieira might be ready for that next move?
Yeah.
I think West Ham's that next move.
Wow. Okay.
I think West Ham's that next move. Just because of the fact I think you can kind of see Moyes' cycle kind of ending, right?
Yeah.
And you can kind of see Vieira kind of hitting that plateau with Crystal Palace. I think if West Ham's smart, I think they go to Patrick Vieira and be like, look, we want to be competing in the top 8. We think you're going to manage to give us there. Here's a layout for us. We obviously have more money than Crystal Palace.
Yeah.
I think it's there, man. I think it's there.
I think that's a reasonable take. It's all it's going to be a matter if Vieira sees it as too much of a parallel move and not enough of a
I think the perfect move is Arsenal, but I think Arsenal is blocked off for him.
I don't know. I don't think Arteta's going anywhere unless there's like a monstrous collapse this year. But I think Arteta's good enough that he'll probably be one of the guys we see stick around for a while over here. But yeah, Moyes is definitely on the older end, and West Ham West Ham has some good players too. I mean, you look at Declan Rice and Souček and some of those guys. That's very strong midfield. They have good, fun, exciting players. We'll see. But yeah, I think if I'm West Ham, I'm like, look, we're not gonna qualify for European competition. We're not gonna crack the top 6 the way it's looking this year. Let's go all in. Let's try and win the Europa Conference League, and let's finish in the middle of the table and see if we can bring home some hardware this year.
Right. Right. You definitely seem like it, man. But dude, Kyle, I just want to say you definitely brought it, man. It was a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you.
I think we scheduled it for 40 minutes, and talking about the Premier League is never going to be a 40-minute conversation, man. But
it can't be. It's impossible.
No, it's impossible. It's impossible, man. But I just want to say thank you for taking the time of the year, Dave, for coming on the show to talk about this with me, man. Because I think we did a good job of covering the entire league. What everyone needs to know. That Frank Lampard is what Patrick Vieira really is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun. I feel like this was I think this was a long time in the making, so I'm really happy to be here and do this. I can talk Premier League all day, man, so anytime.
Right, man. Well, real quick, let the listeners know where can they reach out to you at? What are some things you are working on and everything else?
Yeah, so I'm the co-host of the Dreaming of Freedom podcast. We're a podcast that kind of talks about the intersection of social justice, history, and soccer. Um, we're South Florida based, so we'll be talking about something specifically South Florida, but we're talking about things in world football too. So you can follow us on wherever you find podcasts at Dreaming of Freedom. And then you can follow us, just search for us under the same name on Twitter and Instagram, and you'll be able to find us on there too. And then me personally, you can follow me on Twitter. That's basically where I live, at CaliU44. So CALIU 44.
Basically, man. Well, as always, listeners, we want to say thank you once again for taking time out of your day for listening to our show, because without you, we couldn't do this. So remember, hit that subscribe button. We're trying to get to 30 by the end of this year. This is it for the league previews. We're going to move on to start covering the African teams in the World Cup. So be getting ready for that coverage, and we will holler at you guys later. Be easy and be safe.